Hello, hello, everyone. Great to be here. Hope everybody's staying safe. Yeah, let's talk about chain abstraction on chain AI agents, the most fun topic in the world right now. So, as was mentioned, my background is in machine learning for about 10 years before jumping into the blockchain rabbit hole. I worked across kind of various problems, and my specific focus always been on how do we teach machines to understand language, to answer questions, to reason. And what back in 2015, 16 felt like a science fiction, now we actually see starting to work because of some of the work that obviously we've done at Google, as well as lots of researchers have done since. Me and my co-founder started Near AI originally as a company that was trying to teach machines to code and have AIs actually understand language and write code for people instead of kind of allowing everyone to become a software engineer. Now, back in 2017, again, this was too early, and we ended up figuring out that there's a big opportunity to figure out how to get micropayments, programmable money, programmable assets to actually work on-chain first, as we were kind of exploring how can we use it ourselves for our own needs for crowdsourcing. So that's how Near AI became Near Protocol, but as I'm going to talk about, we've been exploring and doing a lot more AI research back again. Now, the overall vision of Near Protocol and Near in general is the vision of self-sovereignty. It's about individual users having control of their assets, of their data, and of their kind of power of governance, power of choice. This is a broad vision, right? A lot of Web3 projects and companies share this vision and really trying to push together. And that's why a lot of our efforts is actually connecting ecosystems and working kind of across the blockchains, not just building kind of a separate ecosystem on our own. Now, what's happening with generative AI is a big transformation, right? We already had kind of big tech companies that were serving as major kind of middlemen, which have an amazing mode around distribution, and they were pretty much capitalizing on it to continue growing their presence. And the thing is, generative AI is a really good tool to actually leverage up to manipulate people, to get them to spend more time. And so the way to think about it is, as a public company, you need to continue post growth in revenue, right? If you don't show growth in revenue, you end up pretty much being punished by the market, your multipliers collapse, you have less market cap, you cannot hire people, and you're in downward spiral. And so you need to grow revenue. Now imagine you're a big company that already has billions of users. You actually don't have that much more market, more users to grow. And so what you need to do, you need to kind of have more revenue per user. You need to increase amount of kind of money that users spend on your platform or time they spend that you sell to advertisers. And so what we see now is it's not an ill will, right? It's not there's somebody like evil planning a way to manipulate people. It's a very natural kind of incentive-driven process where every time a new model, every time a new product is being launched, it's A/B tested on how much revenue it will bring, how much more revenue it can generate. And through that, it continuously increasing how much time you're spending on the platform, right? TikTok is highly addictive because of this. It's continuously advancing on how much time you're spending. That's a core function they spend because that's how they make money. And even if you've seen actually from Google, which historically had a split between search and ads teams, that ads team was pushing search team to actually get users to spend more time, to search more because the revenue on ad side started to flatten. So we have this problem, and again, generative AI is also transforming business models, right? The value chains are being broken, where before you had a somewhat symbiotic relationship with platforms like Reddit and Stack Overflow, where you had communities coming together, answering questions, discussing things. Now this platform is becoming a data providers, right? And so they're selling kind of all of the users' data pretty much as a way like to kind of harvest it and resell it to somebody else. So that's the really big challenge we're facing. And then if you think of the AI models that have been built by these companies, the challenge we have is that we don't actually know what goes under the water, right? There's a huge amount of effort that kind of comes in to curate the data, right? What goes into this model? And these models are statistical models, right? They are evaluating kind of based on everything they saw, what is the most likely kind of outcome and most likely output that you want given the query. And so if you remove some data from the data set, right, it will not know about it. It will not be able to answer those questions. It will not be able to think about those outcomes. To give you an example, when I was back at Google, if you just kind of train a model on the internet content, the Barack Obama is born in Kenya is as likely on internet as Barack Obama born in Hawaii. And I, as an individual, don't want my model to respond, half of the times that he's born in Kenya, and so I would go and remove the data, remove specific websites that are talking about Barack Obama born in Kenya. And again, that's because conspiracy theories are one of the most pervasive type of content, and people love to talk about them. But this is the type of curation that happens that is completely opaque to the user, right? And so you have these models, even if the parameters are open source, if you don't have the data set it was trained on, you don't actually have an idea what's happening underneath. And there's a lot of like legal team, ethics teams and ads teams that can influence what you see. So this is a challenge with closed AI models. Now, we are kind of at near propagating for a user-owned AI. User-owned AI is where the AI is on the user side, on the community side. It's optimized for your individual well-being, for the success of the community. And it's a different model. It requires a lot of different infrastructure and stack, and we're working across this. Today I'm going to talk about the agents specifically. But just to give you an idea, it starts with data, right? Everything from data curation and content reputation, your personal data that doesn't leave your device, crowdsourcing, a lot of infrastructure that's required to do this, as well as the novel applications that power it. So let's zoom in into AI agents. So one of the things to kind of draw here is there is kind of a dichotomy across centralization, decentralization, as well as this is a tool or autonomous agent, right? So there is a lot to say about tools that can be decentralized. They don't actually require a blockchain, right? Your device, your mobile phone, your laptop can now run a 7B Llama 3 model. It's fully decentralized, right? Your data doesn't leave your device. The model is there. You can run it any time. You don't need like a Web3 kind of blockchain system. Now, if you do want to run something that's more collaborative, or you want to interact and make decisions, and especially the more financial decisions or more consequential decisions they are, right? This is more, we're moving into more kind of autonomous execution. That's where you need to start having a more sophisticated infrastructure. So just to give you some classification, right? Because people love to talk about agents, but there's a lot of different types and different things we talk about when we say agent. So first of all, there's a different type of specialization, right? This can be a prompt-based, right, where you take existing model and you pretty much condition it that, like, hey, you imagine you are XYZ, here's a thing and process that you should follow to do this. You can fine-tune the model, right? So you can actually take the model and train it on specific examples. And you need a fair bit of them to actually have the model process it well. Based on kind of some of the papers, you need actually 100 to 1,000 times to show a specific fact for the weight to remember and be able to kind of understand some information and facts in this, which is different from if you put something in a prompt, it can actually understand it from one example or a couple examples. Finally, you can augment the context with so-called retrieval augmented generation. This is where you have a lot more information available that fits into a context. And what you do, you actually search for this information first in a simplified kind of context space. And then you find only those pieces that are related to what you're asking about and feed that into a context. So in a way, if you imagine, you have a whole Wikipedia, you cannot put all of that into a context of a model. Models have, kind of tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of context right now, of tokens of context. And so you find specific articles that are related to your question and put them into context for it to respond. Now, agent can be just a chatbot, right? This is what usually kind of ChatGPT, what we usually interact with, but it doesn't need to. It can actually output the whole app or interface that you can interact with. It doesn't need to output your text. Even more, it doesn't need to actually even output anything. It can go and do something, right? So-called actions, so using tools. It can go and compute something. It can go call a transaction on a blockchain. And so there's really different types of kind of ways the agents interact. So I mentioned kind of infrastructure. So one of the really core pieces is so-called provable inference. And so this is the idea that if you do want to have an autonomous agent, and you're making decisions based on the output, or even if you're doing it as a tool, and you're making a financial decision, you have no idea if you're calling ChatGPT, if you're calling Google, you have no idea what model was run. You have no idea if they modified your output in some way, if there was an ad auction and they sold your, for example, prompt to somebody else. And so you want a way to verify that indeed this is a correct answer. For that, you need the model to be open source, and you need to use one of these approaches. And again, this is a pretty similar to what we have in kind of blockchain space with layer 2s. We have ZK approach, optimistic approach, and kind of more cryptonomic consensus. One of the challenges with all of this right now is that compared to like blockchains where we don't actually have floating point operations, like EVM literally doesn't have floats, like not integer numbers. In AI model inference, it's all floating points, right? And the problem is that they're non-deterministic. Multiplying two matrices with the same numbers on different hardware results in different output. And that's very challenging for proving that you actually got the same output. Now, there's a lot of research right now how to make this work, but that's kind of one of the big challenges right now in this space. So the other part is, right now we have this kind of single models, and then we hope this model knows everything, right? But it's a pretty kind of limiting framework. Instead, you can imagine having a whole network of different models that are specialized in different contexts, right? Maybe you have a model that has access to blockchain data. You have a model that maybe knows more about medical data and was fine-tuned on specific, doctor decisions. You may have a model that's better at math and logic. And so what we can have with blockchain is actually have kind of this network of agents that we can ask, and the agent that's better suited for a specific task can actually execute for us and receive it. And again, this is where probability is required because you want to know that indeed they give you the correct answer. The other interesting dimension is coordination, right? Right now, ChatGPT is just a single player. It's like you and a tool that you're interacting with, and they're just executing a task. Now, you can imagine also there's a collaborative environment, right, where all of these agents trying to solve some task together. They're all contributing. They're all kind of picking up work from each other. Or you can have a competitive environment, right, where you have some goal, and everybody's trying to compete. And this is what actually all us and on prediction markets, right, where every agent is trying to predict what will be the outcome of elections or what will be the price of Bitcoin in the future. And they're all competing, right? And the ones that predict better can actually win more money, and in the result, you have a system that has kind of crypto incentives at the core. Now, I mentioned chain abstraction because one of the challenges right now, as you're implementing these agents, they're all bound to a single blockchain. They're limited kind of by what you can do there, and they're limited how can they navigate and use other tools in Web3 space. And so one of the benefits of kind of technology we built with chain signatures is to allow a agent on Near to actually transact across all blockchains, right? Be that Bitcoin, EVMs, Solana, Cosmos chains, Doge, whatever. And so you can have an agent that starts in one place, but has access to all of the Web3 environment. Now, what you can use this for example, there's an evolution from kind of programmable assets that we build with smart contracts right now to so-called intelligent assets, right? This is an agent on-chain now that is able to kind of make decisions based on oracles, based on what's happening in the real world, based on what's happening on-chain, and based on that, modify the asset kind of asset behavior, right? Maybe it blocks a transaction if you're not, if something didn't happen in the world. Maybe it understands that it needs to rebalance its book. Whatever it is, like it now opens up a new dimension of programmability and also allows people to program it with natural language. Now, there's a big caveat, is that right now language models are not robust for adversarial behavior, and specifically, they're really easy to jailbreak, right? If you kind of only use the prompt to define what the behavior of the model should be, there's a way to pretty much convince it and like find a way to convince it to actually, make a decision that you want, even if it's not the rules that were kind of given it originally. The other interesting dimension is, on blockchain, everybody is equal, right? You can be a person, you can be an AI agent, you can be a cat, right? It doesn't matter, you're in an address that you can interact with, and you can have specific expectations. And so one of the really cool things is now AI agents can be actually on both sides of a marketplace where they can be given tasks and executing on tasks and verifying things, kind of being part of the economy where people and agents are pretty much providing the inputs and the work that they are best suited at. And so at some point, some work, for example, is only possible by person. Some work right now, person can do, but AI agents are starting to do, and so they can actually charge less. And so you have this new economy that's been built through this kind of gig marketplace that, again, blockchain facilitates, because you don't have this ability to do in the real world because agents don't have bank accounts and cannot do digital work and get paid for that. Finally, the way agents interact with blockchain, right, it can be just running on a single machine and have a private key. It can be used in multisig like a safe, right, and interacting through this. You can have multiple agents actually coordinating and confirming that the actions are correct, with people having kind of else in the loop. Or it can be a fully smart contract that have a stakeholders, token holders, that actually can veto if something is going wrong. I mentioned there's different levels of autonomy, and the interesting kind of final level is so-called reinforcement learning agent. This is when you, instead of defining a natural language kind of what it should do, or defining a mission and let it plan, you're actually defining the goal, defining the value function, defining like, oh, we want to get more trees grown or reduce CO2 level, and then agent goes and figures out what actions it should take, right? So this is a reinforcement learning agent where it models the world and it tries to understand what are the actions it can take to improve toward that goal. Again, let's imagine solving the CO2 problem on a planet. And so this actually can be a prototype of AI president, AI system that is coordinating people and is able to provide everyone individual context on what they should do and have like massive projects happening around the world. So the benefit is with DAOs, we can actually prototype it, we can give it some money, and we can actually see how this works and test it out before trying it out on more complicated problems. So as Near Foundation, we are working on incubating a lot of different AI projects kind of across infrastructure, agentic frameworks, as well as novel use cases. So if you're working on AI, if you're working on kind of the space, apply at Horizon, hdn.xyz, or talk to me. And also, we're working on Near AI, which was the original idea, program synthesis, to specifically build Web3 applications and help pretty much bring all of the use cases that we believe Web3 should have way simpler, because you can just describe what you want to be built and launch. So I'll just leave you with this idea that we're right now at the fork of the road, right? The close kind of big companies have a huge moat and huge flywheel, which accelerating their success. And at the same time, their success is not our success. It's not an individual success. It's their kind of profit generation and extraction of money. It creates a gap between people that even bigger than anything we've seen before. And so we need to figure out how to build this user-owned AI ecosystem that is focused on individual, that is focused on our kind of collective success, not of few individual megacorps. Thank you, and follow me on Twitter for more info.